I can read it.
No, you can't.
Alistair Finch, a man who measured life in quarterly earnings, slammed a pen on the boardroom table. Before him lay the contracts to sell Finch Industries, his family's legacy. This wasn't just a sale, it was a victory over sentiment. His legal team, a row of identical suits, offered faint, practiced smiles. "It's done then," Alistair said, his voice as cold as the glass tower around them. "After tomorrow, my father's dusty old company will be nothing but a very, very large number in my bank account." Just then, the boardroom doors creaked open. An assistant hurried in, holding a small, weathered box like it might explode. "Sir, this just arrived." It was marked, "To be delivered upon the final sale." Alistair's jaw tightened, another one of his father's sentimental games. Inside was a single yellowed envelope. The letter within was covered in a strange, flowing script that nobody recognized. He passed it to his lead counsel, Mr. Davies. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" Davies squinted. "I've never seen anything like it, sir." For the next hour, they tried everything. Language experts were called, translation software was run, archives were scanned. Nothing. The consensus was unanimous. It was gibberish, the last nonsensical rambling of a dying man. In the corner, Elena, the maid, quietly polished the windows, trying to be invisible. Her 10-year-old daughter, Maya, sat in a nearby chair, doing her homework. She'd been watching the whole commotion with a quiet curiosity. Finally, a small voice cut through the tense silence. "I know what it says." Every head turned. Maya was looking right at the letter, her expression calm. Alistair Finch let out a short, cruel laugh. "You?" he scoffed, his eyes dripping with disdain. He looked her up and down, from her simple dress to her worn-out shoes. "And what could you possibly know? Go get some coffee with your mother." Elena's face went pale with fear, and she moved to pull her daughter away. But Maya didn't even flinch. She just held Alistair's gaze, then looked back at the letter. Her young voice cut through the room with perfect clarity. "To my son, if you are reading this, your pride has already led you to ruin." Alistair's mocking smile froze. The color drained from his face. Suddenly, he wasn't a billionaire in a boardroom. He was just a boy, being scolded by his father from beyond the grave. The silence in the room was heavier than any contract Alistair had ever signed. Mr. Davies and the lawyers exchanged panicked glances, their expensive confidence completely gone. Alistair Finch was a man who was never surprised, who controlled everything. Yet here he was, struck completely silent by a child he'd dismissed a minute ago. He had spent his whole life running from his father's shadow. Arthur Finch built his company on handshakes and integrity. He knew the names of his workers and believed in loyalty over profit. Alistair just saw that as weakness. To him, Finch Industries wasn't a legacy. It was just a fat asset to be sold to the highest bidder. This sale wasn't just business. It was his final, defiant statement that his father's way was obsolete. And now, his father was speaking to him again, through the most impossible messenger imaginable. Elena rushed to Maya's side, her hands trembling. "Maya, please, stop. You'll get us in trouble," she whispered, tugging at her daughter's arm. But Alistair raised a hand, his motion sharp. His eyes, now wide with a desperate curiosity, were locked on Maya. "No," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Let her speak." He gestured toward the letter in Mr. Davies's trembling hand and nodded at Maya. "Continue." Maya took a small breath, totally unfazed. The room full of powerful men seemed to shrink around her, their importance fading with every word she translated. "I knew this day would come, Alistair. I knew the moment I was gone, you would mistake my life's work for a pile of cash. I don't fault your ambition, But I do fault your blindness. You see the price of everything and the value of nothing." Maya paused, scanning the page. "That is why I created a safeguard. Not for the company, but for you. The legal will you have, the one that gives you everything? It's a decoy. It's tied to this letter, my true will, written in the dialect of your grandfather's village, a place you never bothered to visit, a language you dismissed, just like you've dismissed our family's history." Mr. Davies started to sputter. "Sir, this is ridiculous. A letter can't just invalidate a notarized legal document." "Quiet," Alistair snapped, his eyes never leaving Maya. Maya kept translating. "The condition is simple. To get your full inheritance, you must cancel the sale of Finch Industries. Then, you have to travel to the village of Oak Haven, in the mountains where I was born. Only there will the final part of your inheritance be unlocked." Alistair's heart was hammering. This was so typical of his father, always teaching, always testing. "Should you go through with the sale before making this journey?" Maya read, her voice solemn. "The moment those contracts are signed, 95% of the Finch estate, including all the money from the sale, will be transferred to a trust. A foundation dedicated to everything you ignore: global literacy, cultural preservation, and community aid." The room exploded into chaos. Mr. Davies was frantically whispering to his colleagues, who were already on their phones, their faces a mask of professional panic. A multi-billion-dollar deal was being sabotaged by a ghost. Then came the final blow. "And you will not go alone," Maya translated. "You will be lost there. Your money and power mean nothing in Oak Haven. The only person who can guide you is the village elder, a woman who holds the key to our family's past and your future. For years, I kept in touch with her dear friend, a woman of great wisdom who once worked in our home. You knew her only as your maid. Her name was Annalise, and her granddaughter now stands before you." Every eye in the room landed on Maya. She wasn't just some kid who knew a rare language. She was the key. Her family and Alistair's were connected by a secret bond his father had built, a bond Alistair never even knew existed. The girl he had laughed at wasn't an obstacle. She was his only way forward. The genius of his father's plan crashed down on Alistair. It was a checkmate from the grave. He wasn't just being outsmarted. He was being shown how empty his life truly was. His own father had trusted a maid's family more than his own son. The humiliation burned hotter than any corporate failure he'd ever known. He sank into his chair, the fight draining right out of him. The arrogance, the swagger, it all dissolved, leaving a hollowed-out man in its place. He looked at the sale contracts, which now seemed like meaningless pieces of paper. He looked at Mr. Davies, whose legal arguments now sounded like the buzzing of a fly. Finally, his eyes rested on Maya. He no longer saw a poor girl. He saw the strength of her grandmother. He saw the wisdom his father admired. He saw the legacy he had almost thrown away for nothing. "What else?" Alistair asked, his voice cracked and raw. "What else does it say?" Maya looked at the final lines. "I hope you choose the harder path, son. Not for the money, but for your soul. Find what I found in those mountains. Find yourself. Your true inheritance isn't in a bank. It's in your character. And it's not too late to build one." A single tear rolled down Alistair's cheek, the first he'd shed since he was a boy. He slowly stood, walked across the room, and knelt before the 10-year-old girl. His head bowed. The billionaire looked up at the maid's daughter. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words weren't for show. They were a painful, genuine admission. "I was wrong, about everything." He turned to Elena, who stood frozen, watching the man she served for years kneel before her child. "I need your help," he said. "Please." Then, with a resolve he hadn't felt in years, Alistair walked back to the table. He picked up the multi-billion-dollar contract, the culmination of his life's work, and with steady hands, he tore it in half. Then again and again. He looked at Mr. Davies. The deal is off. Turning his back on his stunned legal team, he faced Maya once more, a faint, humble smile touching his lips for the first time. "It seems," Alistair said, "that you and I have a trip to plan." Alistair thought his father's legacy was just something he could sell. What he found out was that it was something he had to earn. He was about to go on a journey, not to a place on a map, but back to the values he had lost, all with the help of the very person he had looked down on. So, what's the real takeaway here? It's that you should never, ever judge a book by its cover. True value, real wisdom, and genuine character are almost always hidden in the most unexpected places. If this story resonated with you, like this video, subscribe and think about sharing it with someone who might need to hear it.